Here we go. Mm.
Okay. Okay. So there we have Gregor Gregersen, the founder of Silver Bullion and the Safe House Vault in Singapore, and he's also now the CEO of Cash. So Gregor, welcome. Welcome aboard, and how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for taking the time for this.
Okay, great. So we got a few questions that we want to go through with you to help people understand Cash CGT, this gold backed token. But first, can you give us a brief background about yourself, and being that you're a precious metals guy, what led you to start the Cash Gold token?
Well, I started off as a software engineer. Actually, I started off in finance first. It's then ended up as a software engineer working for banks mostly, building trading systems, compliance systems, and so on. So, as you all know, I started Silver Bullion back in 2009 because of what I saw happening within the bank in 2008 because of financial crisis, and created Silver Bullion, to essentially protect people against the fallout of a collapsing financial system. So that's essentially my background: software engineering and finance. And I've pretty much been on this mission to create alternatives to the existing systems and to protect wealth since then.
Okay. Um, Cash token, what is it? We briefly went through it from the In Gold We Trust report, but I'm pretty certain you can explain it a whole lot better than me or the report.
Yeah, so cash token, to understand it, you have to somewhat understand what ERC20 tokens are all about. And for people which are not familiar with it, it takes a little bit to really get to understand the power of these things. Um, if I were to summarize the two main functions of cash in this context, I would say A, it will be as an alternative to COMEX, because as you all know, COMEX is a very centralized system and it only has a tiny amount of gold backing it. We're talking about maybe 2% or something like this. Yet COMEX and other future exchanges are fundamentally important in order to have price discovery, determine a price for gold, and so on. But if we really are getting to a point where COMEX and some of the other exchanges might default, we're going to need some alternative. And so what Cash can do is start being a seed for a standard, for a way to people to trade, not just in a centralized fashion, but among each other and through distributed crypto exchanges in order to create a price. And essentially, Cash has already started doing that. The other important function of Cash is that essentially it kind of acts as a glue between crypto assets such as Bitcoin and physical gold. And the reason why it is this glue is that you can trade cash now on crypto exchanges like BitHump, which is the 11th largest exchange by volume now in the crypto world. And so you could exchange Bitcoin, for example, into these gold tokens, and you can take delivery of the gold tokens, so you can go into physical gold. Or you can choose to sell the gold back to gold dealers that are accepting the redeemed gold of cash. So what's very different about it is that you essentially have a guaranteed way of getting back into gold in an efficient and fast way.
Okay. Well, we'll touch on that again. But I mean, this right now, a lot of on the live stream, we had a lot of guys, who are into gold and silver. Why should this community care about a token, Cash Gold token?
I think we should care about it. And remember, I'm part of this community. I mean, I've basically dedicated the last 10 years of my life, building silver bullion and bringing, especially silver, to Singapore. And as you know, we sold about 850 million Singapore dollars. It's about 550 million US dollars worth of gold, physical gold. And been very careful not to touch future contracts, leverage, or anything like this. Everything we do is physical, and our customers always get their own physical unique bars. So uh, for cash essentially is, as I mentioned before, as we had this recent crisis coming, essentially we start seeing a breakdown of where prices are being determined. We had prices in the future exchanges being different from the prices trading exchanges, up to $60 per ounce of gold between London and COMEX and so on. And if we get to a point where people start doubting the validity of the US dollars, you can bet that a lot more systems are going to start failing. And as you understand cash and as you understand these ERC20 tokens, you can start to understand that these are essentially warehouse receipts. These is, or think of it like a gift voucher that you can convert back into physical gold. And you can send this gift voucher to anybody else without having to go through a centralized entity.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's like a physical gift voucher you give to anybody, and nobody knows who you gave it to. So it's essentially a great thing because it's a little bit like gold. Instead, you have a certain amount of anonymity by using it and a certain amount of freedom. And it's not something that is, that you have to buy from cash. You can buy it from any party, and any party can take the gold, tokenize it. And cash is just essentially playing that custodian role to make sure the gold is there through the gold vault which are handling it. And the buying and selling is not done by cash. It's done by bullion dealers that are participating into it. So it's a fully distributed system which is meant to scale up. And it's starting slow, but it's something that people, I think, as crises develop, will slowly start to learn how it works, slowly start to hopefully trust it because of transparency. And it's setting the seed, setting an alternative so that we can go to something else. And when the time comes, at least there's something. If cash turns out not to be successful for whatever reason, then okay, but it's better to have alternatives than not to have them.
Right. True. Who and or what businesses are backing the Cash Gold token?
So Cash is an independent company. It's not owned by Silver Bullion. I specifically did it this way because Cash has a different mission from Silver Bullion. But we essentially, myself and a number of other people which have been working on Silver Bullion have also been helping to build Cash. It's all self-funded. And my philosophy with Cash really is to look at this more as a standard and to slowly bring more and more bullion dealers and other trusted entities under the Cash umbrella. And one way of doing it is by to essentially explain the model to people and then offering them to buy into it. And so it was important, I think, for us to start to have a reliable co-owner come in besides Silver Bullion. And we have that in the form of Dylan Gage. So if you're not familiar with Dylan Gage, it might not be as much of a household name because Dylan Gage is essentially one of the largest bullion distributors in the United States. They're delivering bullion to about 2,000 bullion dealers worldwide. So chances are that some of the bullion you bought, if you bought it through various dealers out there, that bullion probably came through Dylan Gage. I mean, they're doing several $1 billion worth of gold, physical gold deliveries all over the world. So having them on board, they've been around for 45 years. It's both an endorsement for the business model and, of course, for the integrity of the people behind it. So they bought 5% of Cash earlier this year, and they're quite important for Cash because they have a lot of logistic capabilities. So through them, we can make sure that people can get a 100-gram ounce bar delivered, in most places around the world. I'm saying most because, especially with COVID-19 right now, things are being a bit restricted. But if you're living in the US, essentially through Dylan Gage, you can get that gold bar delivered very quickly and efficiently.
Okay, yeah, Dylan Gage is a big name. But what about those in the gold and silver community who believe if you don't hold it, you don't own it? Why buy a token that is in reality out of my reach as opposed to holding gold that's in my reach and in my possession?
Yeah, if you want to hold it, since there's no way around you buying it and you keeping it yourself by definition. But I think Cash, we tried to go as far as possible to provide as much as transparency. And what you can do with cash is you can actually see the gold. You can't hold it, but you can see it because every bar has a photo of it, which was taken by the vault personnel directly. And I think we have a short video to kind of show you how that works. But essentially, you can be assured that that gold is there. And if you have the tokens, you can redeem the tokens for that specific bar. So for example, if you have, let's say 100 tokens, that's a 100-gram bar, you can go and to cash and you can decide which vault you want to take delivery of. If you want to take delivery, if you're in the US, it's better to take it out of Dallas. And you can look at all the photos, all the bars that Dallas has. And you can choose the one you like the most. Maybe you like bar number 781 because that's a lucky number for you. I don't know. And then you take delivery of that. There's nobody anywhere close which has built anything like that. And Cash is using an asset tracking management called GramChain, which I basically spent the last 2 years building, which is designed to be deployable in third-party vaults, to be simple, and yet to be extremely transparent. It's using its own RFID tag, its own bags, its own scanners, and more importantly, it sends all scan information in real time to the system. And before it does that, it goes through an API where essentially that data gets hashed and it gets posted on the public blockchain. And what that means, think of it like a stamp of approval from the blockchain. And the beauty of that thing is, if we ever change any piece of that data, then it will be made very clear because essentially a tamper evidence system. And that means we cannot manipulate the data as cash. And because cash is not putting in the data, it's coming from the vault, essentially we have a very high level of transparency. And that's, I think, once you go to a system where you don't hold it in your hand, but you have it somewhere else, and you need guarantees, and you need to be able to trust it, I think cash is by far the best system out there. So I encourage people to have a look at it and understand it a little bit more. And we made a number of videos to try and explain it, in a good way.
Okay. Maybe I'll get to one of those videos now.
Okay,
The
great.
Cash philosophy. Cash is a technology company that tokenizes physical assets and leverages blockchain technology to provide proof of reserve for physical assets. The Cash Gold Token, CGT, is Cash's first product. Cash does not buy or sell gold tokens to the general public. Instead, Cash's scope of operations is limited to tokenizing physical gold and redeeming tokens for physical gold. Cash Gold tokens can be obtained on any digital exchanges that list Cash Gold, from participating gold dealers that offer Cash Gold, by depositing physical gold in a participating vault either directly or through a gold dealer. Cash Gold token holders can redeem tokens for gold to be sold for fiat currencies to participating gold dealers, exchange tokens for Bitcoin or other digital assets on exchanges, redeem tokens for physical gold to be shipped to their verified address or picked up at a participating vault. Just like Visa relies on banks and merchants to ensure its credit cards can pay for goods worldwide, Cash relies on participating gold dealers and exchanges to ensure efficient conversions between digital assets, physical gold, and fiat currencies. Okay, so that was a bit of the Cash Gold token. Any comments that you want to add or explain regarding that video?
Yeah, so this is a short version of the video. It's part of our primary video out there. There's a video called Why You Can Trust Cash, which goes into a lot more details. Also, I would really encourage people to take a look at explorer.cash.gold. And if you go to that, then essentially you can browse the different gold bars. Right now, Cash has about 32 kilos or so of gold in there. It's about 1,000 ounces of gold. And you actually can see each one of these bars. And you can see the history of them, of when it was vaulted, where it's vaulted, and so on, and all of that data. So you can see it for yourself, and I encourage you to do so at explorer.cash.gold, or you just go to the cash.gold website and you'll have the links there.
Okay. Um, Cash token is said to be fully backed by gold. Does that mean I own a specific gold bar, or if not, do I own anything?
Okay, so the term ownership is misused a lot in this industry. So you don't own something unless something was sold to you with an invoice which has a specific ID of the bar. And that's what we're always very keen to point out at Silver Bullion. So with Silver Bullion, you always have segregated ownership. With cash, you don't have that, because by definition, if you have a token is an IOU. So cash essentially is what you would call a fully allocated um, system, meaning that whenever you buy some of these tokens, there is gold there. And the way it actually works is that for cash, we don't accept money, we don't accept bitcoins and so on, we only accept gold. So that's how we can make sure there's always a gold, because it always starts by gold. Only once the gold is there can it be tokenized. And there's a check system, or something called the token governor, which essentially makes sure that no new tokens can be created unless gold has been registered in GramChain first. That is there, that it belongs to cash. And these two things are provided not by cash, these are put in by the vault itself, third-party vaults, such as Sprinks, Loomis, and so on. So unless Loomis says, there's the gold here, and with the photo and all these things, and says, it belongs to cash, only at that point can cash actually go in and tokenize it. And so that's not a subjective decision, that's part of the blockchain smart contract code that underlines cash. And all of this, all the code, by the way, can be seen and looked at, which is partly how transparency happens in the blockchain world. So, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So so unlike the Fed, where they can just print money and print money and print money, a token cannot come into existence unless there's gold behind it, or even in front of it, I guess we could say. But how can I really trust that the gold is there?
Again, look at the Explorer, and I guess take a risk and buy $5,000 or $6,000 worth of tokens, so you can take delivery for 100 gram bars. Then you can go through the Explorer, choose one of the bars to redeem, and have it shipped to your house.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have a short video clip on that as well, so I'll run through this. Next generation gold tracking. The Cash Explorer provides public data on every bar backing Cash Gold and includes photographs, vault documents, and an event history for each bar. This data is not controlled or created by Cash. Instead, all tracking data is provided by Vault personnel using specialized RFID scanners and tamper-evident bags. This provides multiple checks and balances to ensure that Cash Gold is always 100% fully backed by physical gold. Each event's data hash is broadcasted in real time to the Ethereum blockchain by the scanner as Vault personnel process the gold bars, guaranteeing that event history of each bar cannot be tampered with or manipulated in any way. Each event and its corresponding hashes are public data available on the Cash Explorer, as well as any Ethereum block explorer. This system ensures that each and every Cash Gold token is 100% backed by 1 gram of pure investment-grade gold. For additional details on Cash Gold's backing, watch our Why Cash Can Be Trusted video. Okay, so I guess this is the video explaining that there are certain processes that gold has to go through to be put up on the blockchain that are not done by Cash, but are done by the actual vaults.
Right, and that's part of the checks and balances system that we build in, that Cash essentially performs a specific role, which is tokenization and the redemption of gold. and keeping track of all of this with help of the gram chain system. And then everything else, we are reusing the existing vault infrastructure out there. And we are reusing existing gold dealers to provide liquidity for the whole system. And the gold dealers like it because what they're buying is not the token. What they're buying is the actual bar as part of the redemption. So when, say, for example, you want to you have 2,000 tokens and you take delivery of a 1 kilo bar, for example, but you don't want the bar, you want US dollars for it, you want to sell it. Well, what you can do with the redemption process is say, I want to sell it, and you will see the bids of the different gold dealers and see how much they're willing to pay for that bar. And it's vault specific. So somebody might pay a little bit more in Singapore compared to dollars, for example, because maybe right now the dealers need more gold in Singapore. And they might be offering $5 more. So maybe in dollars they're offering minus like $15 below spot, and maybe in Singapore they're offering $10 below spot per ounce. So if that's the case, you don't really care because you're selling it back. So you'll just take delivery of the bar in Singapore. You choose your bar, and say Dylan Gage, for example, might be offering the best bid. So what's going to happen is first you redeem it, but you also lock in the price at that point with the bid of Dylan Gage. And once you transfer your tokens to pay for that bar, Dylan Gage then gets the order to essentially make an account for you and wire those funds to your bank account. And as soon as the money goes out, cash releases that bar to Dylan Gage at that vault. Now, what's in it for Dylan Gage or for other liquidity providers? Essentially, they get a free customer. They get to buy back the gold at the price they're offering. And because Dylan Gage is a distributor, it tends to be a very good price. It tends to be better than what you can normally get from a bullion dealer. Yeah. And you essentially are, and Dylan Gage essentially gets a free customer and he gets a free buyback. So what's there not to like? Plus Dylan Gage and these other bullion dealers don't have regulatory issues because they're not buying the token. See, if a dealer starts buying the token itself, then the regulator might come in and say, okay, do you have a license to actually deal with these tokens? Yeah. But in this case, Dylan Gage is just buying a bar. And because they can see on CramChain what that bar is, and because we have certain minimum gold standards on CramChain, they're willing to buy that bar back right away. Plus, I mean, we have a 10-year working relationship with Dylan Gage and with many other of the distributors out there. So essentially, that's why we're able to do this. And that's something that makes Cash very different from these other tokens. A, it's the transparency of being able to see everything. And B, having this network of bullion dealers that are bidding to buy back the gold bars and having found a way to do so without buying the token itself, which makes it so much easier from a regulatory point of view.
Okay, let's see. I get this is a question a lot of people would like to know, though. How can I trust that you or your partners will not run off with our gold or lease it out or sell the gold in the vaults as inventory?
Well, the thing with Cash is that the first scans that you do is basically an existence scan. We call it the vault scan. And that makes sure the item is actually there. The next scan that's being done is the vault actually saying who it belongs to. So who has custody over it. So in this case, it will be Cash. Now, the scan after that is Cash coming in and saying, I'm using this gold to back tokens. So it's being logged now. And this is a public record, which is being sent with a blockchain, so this data cannot be changed. And again, it's fully public. So because of this, it will be difficult for Cash to now say, take that same gold, which is listed there by serial number, and find somebody who's going to encumber it in a different way, because you can't really encumber something if there's a clear record that that gold is used for something else. So it always comes back down to transparency. And it's something which, I've been fighting for the last 10 years to increase transparency.
Yeah.
in the gold industry, because only when you have transparency can you create trust. And as some of you readers said before, holding it is still some of the safest things because you don't have to trust somebody else. But if we can create systems which are so transparent that they can build trust, then you can do a lot more with that gold. And what I'm aiming for is not just for people to be able to have their own gold or to securely store it somewhere, but for us to replace a lot of these existing systems that we have, which are very suboptimal.
Yeah.
And they're way too dependent on centralized governments and so on and so on. So taking the advantages of public blockchains, and again, you have to be aware that there's a lot of misunderstanding and fake marketing and scams out there, which is why some of these blockchains sometimes have a bad reputation. But it all comes down to you understanding one very fundamental thing. There are public blockchains, primarily the Bitcoin and the Ethereum blockchains, which are fully distributed, and you can trust these. And then there's a lot of other smaller custom-built blockchains, things like say Hyperledger and so on. And these are products made by companies by IBM for anybody to create their own little blockchain. And the reason a blockchain is safe is because so many different people are running nodes. So if you have 100,000 nodes out there processing data, you can be pretty sure that it's a reliable system. But if you have 3 nodes, which are all run by one company, that blockchain is useless. That's just being used either to be a scam or for marketing purposes with no real reason behind it. So that's something important to understand. The term blockchain, can refer to different things. So you always want to make sure that we're talking about a public blockchain. And there are other ones, but Ethereum and Bitcoin essentially are the ones that can be trusted. So everything is based on source. Now, how can you make sure we don't run away with your gold? By using the Ethereum blockchain, again, cash has no control over it, which is a key thing to understand. We cannot freeze your gold tokens. There's no backdoor in our smart contract to be able to do that. It is possible in some of the other implementation, but not in ours. So people cannot take your CGT tokens. Only the person which controls the private key has control over it, which also means that you have to be careful not to lose your private key, which is the other side of it. You have complete control. It's like your physical gold. If you know your private key, your password basically, then it's yours. If you lose that, then you just lost it. And we cannot recover it for you because we don't have control over it. So that's one part of it. The other question is, well, what about the physical gold? Because the tokens are not worth anything if we run away with the gold, right? So I guess my answer to that is we do have some checks and controls in place. So for example, if you want to send some tokens out, it needs 3 out of 5 votes as part of a contract. If something has to be withdrawn as far as gold, there's a similar process in place. So we have multiple redundancies that multiple people have to approve it. But I would also like to point out that you have to look at who is behind it and whether the people behind it have an incentive or reason to do so. So in our case, we're already storing about 350 million US dollars worth of gold or silver at the safe house. And plus taking the gold and running away with it. I mean, with how much gold can you run away? Because all of these things are being tracked. And, essentially I will be becoming a fugitive. And what if I take 50 kilos of gold out of the 3,000 kilos which we're storing now? Why would I do that? Right? So I guess oftentimes that's a bigger part of it. Plus in silver bullion, as well as cash, the people behind who are building it are also shareholder in it. So they have every incentive to make cash a success and not to try to become a fugitive by running away with a bit of gold. I think that's the best way I would answer that question for now. But as cash becomes bigger, we can definitely look at some additional security measures, like have some maybe another third party. Maybe we can go through a trustee, or we can go through some lawyers, or we can look at some of these sort of methods. But cash right now is still very small, and once it grows, then it's definitely something, especially if there's demand for it, so that we can look for more ways to protect against that.
Okay, appreciate the honesty in that one. What's the difference between Cash Gold token and the dozens, if not hundreds, of other tokens that are backed by gold, and especially those that are backed by mints?
Okay, so I normally say there are four things that make cash unique, or key items. You can see the video on our homepage for it. But the first thing you have to understand is Cash token is on a public blockchain. There are a lot of tokens out there, or implementations, which essentially are either on a private blockchain, and a private blockchain is just like a database, basically. I mean, it's kind of useless. You shouldn't even be calling it a blockchain. It's just a very fancy way of storing data with little extra purpose. So if you want to be on a blockchain, it has to be public. So typically that means ERC20 standard. So that's a very important part. If you're ERC20, it means you can send this to anybody else. It's freely tradable, and it can be traded on crypto exchanges. So Cash Gold token can do all of that, and it's being listed on BitHump right now. So that's the first sort of divider. Now, a corollary to that is the reason there are not many serious gold tokens out there that are ERC20 is because financial institutions are not allowed to do it. And let me explain to you why. If you are a bank or anything else being regulated by a financial authority, you have to do an AML KYC against every user which might receive such a token or such items that you're trading. So if you want to buy some stock, you have to get a stockbroker account, and that stockbroker then has to provide all that information, AML KYC, to the central authority, and so on and so on. And that's a very firm rule. Now, ERC20 tokens, like Bitcoin, are very new in that you can create your own account just by coming up with a private key and then generating your address out of it. So it's completely distributed. That's sort of the new innovation. And financial regulators are sort of scratching their head how to handle it. But having said that, if you're under financial regulation, you're not allowed to create an open token like we have created now, because it can be sent to anybody. So what we do with this token, when you redeem or you tokenize something, we have to do AML KYC checks on who you are. But once you have that gold token, you can send it to anybody. So it's very much like physical gold. And what that means is that companies like JP Morgan and all these other guys, if they are talking about creating a token, like a JP token, that's something that's completely under their control in their own little quote-unquote blockchain, which really isn't much of a blockchain. And so that's their own reasons for doing it, but it's not to create a distributed system. So for you to be able to create such a token, you either create it, let's say, semi-illegally, because you don't have a regulator approving it, or you go through a pretty hard process of figuring out how you can create such a token and get regulatory approval to actually do it. Now, in the case of Singapore, we spent over 1 year working with authorities, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is Singapore Central Bank, as well as the Ministry of Law, to kind of see how this can be set up. And essentially, it turned out that the latest legislation, which is the Precious Stone, Precious Metal Act, which covers bullion dealers, will also allow people to issue their tokens. And then, there's still a lot of legal work involved, with actually working with MIS to make sure that we are not falling under MIS and have MIS sort of look at it and basically agree that it can be handled by Ministry of Law and only Ministry of Law. And we went through all of these processes. So we created regulatory certainty under Singapore law. And once we have that certainty that it's legal to use the token in Singapore, we can then use this token anywhere, because like any token, it doesn't care about borders. It can't really be controlled that way. And we can create liquidity anywhere, because what we are selling to, say, Dill Engage are not the tokens. It's the actual gold bars after the redemption has happened. So you can see that we essentially put a lot of work and effort into creating an open token and yet have it regulated. So how many other tokens are out there which manage to do something similar? Well, 3. There's us. Or maybe I should say 4, but you know, that fourth one essentially has no volume at all. So really, right now there are 3 tokens which I would say are relevant. It's Cash, which is the newest one. We just launched it on BitHump last week. Then there's Paxos and there's Tether Gold. Now, the difference between these tokens is that both Tether Gold and Paxos Gold are really crypto companies. And they started off basically creating stable coins to allow crypto users to sell the Bitcoin into a stable coin, which essentially is a coin which is backed by $1. Now, without going into a lot of details, they're having a lot of problems to actually prove the dollars are there. With gold, it's a lot easier to do, because you can just show that the gold is there. In case of banks, when you have US dollars backing it, the banks don't want to be on record to actually show that they're holding US dollars. But anyways, that's a different story. What it comes down to essentially is that these guys, these other tokens, they're not coming from the bullion industry. They don't necessarily understand the bullion industry so well. So what they did is just copy their stablecoin structure and then said, okay, we'll have some 400-ounce bars, which we are going to be backing this. And trust us, it's backed. We have some serial numbers here. And that's pretty much it. And if you want to take delivery, oh yeah, you need to have about $1 million or $750,000, because you have to take a 400-ounce gold delivery bar, which essentially means there's no practical redemption, and you have to trust them to buy it back. If you take Cash Gold token, you can take delivery of a 100-gram bar, you can seize the bars, and you have a network of bullion dealers which want to buy it back from you. So you can see how we are building this system to essentially scale up, and for it to be a standard where hopefully more and more bullion dealers are going to come in and participate in this, and more crypto exchanges are going to come in to basically set a price and have that price increasingly, you know, follows the price of gold. And hopefully, once we have a big crisis, and if there's a default on COMEX, people are going to start using a CGT-like price as a reference. Because what matters all the time, what really matters is, can you take the thing you're pricing and get your physical for it reliably and quickly? And that's essentially what Cash is all about. And that's what makes Cash unique.
Okay, yeah, that alone is it's a huge difference right there. Let me just run through this, because I had some of the questions preloaded. You may have answered them. Yeah, so if I were to own a Cash token, and you just talked about some redemption there, and it is fully backed by gold, Cash token, can I redeem it? And if yes, where? Where can I redeem this gold?
So have a look at the videos that are out there. But right now, we are storing gold in Loomis, Singapore. I'm not sure if you're Loomis, but Loomis essentially is the biggest vault operator in Europe, especially Switzerland. It's used by most banks. We already have a contract with Prinks to do it. We just haven't deposited any gold in Prinks. We have it at the Safe House in Singapore, and we have it at IDS Dallas. IDS is the primary logistic hub for Dell Engage for the sending of bullion and the storage. With IDS, we can also get some stored in Canada. So essentially, as you go to the cache, to the explorer.cache.gold, you can see where all the gold of cache is stored. You can take delivery of any of these. Now, just bear in mind, if you want it shipped, then you should take it the closest to you. And the cache system actually has a whole logistical system behind it, which is showing you the most efficient shipping route. So if you're in the US, you'll probably want to take delivery of the gold stored in Dallas.
Okay. Let's see here. Bitcoin allows borderless transactions and movement of money. And we touched on this. So it is fair to say that Cash Gold Token allows you to essentially have borderless movement of your gold almost anywhere in the world, because that's a huge game changer right there.
Yes, and to be honest, we haven't even begun to understand all the implications of this thing, because I give you an example. One of the things that somebody just pointed out to me, which we're planning to do, is that essentially people might not be keen to holding cash tokens themselves because they might not be comfortable using a crypto wallet and so on. But say, for example, that you have gold in the United States, and for whatever reason you decide that you would want that gold to go to Singapore. Well, right now, there are only two ways of doing it. You either sell your gold in the United States, get US dollars, send it to Singapore, and buy gold in Singapore. The other option is you take that gold and physically ship it to Singapore, which is not always cheap, and you got all this paperwork and so on. Well, another option is you take that and you deposit it in a participating vault in the US. So, for example, you send it to Dallas, right, for tokenization, and then immediately you take delivery of the equivalent amount of gold, and you can choose your bars in Singapore. So now basically you have a swapping function. So it's not a service that we're offering now, but it's something that we plan to offer soon. And for dealers, it works in a similar way. By SIM, when people want to redeem and sell their gold for US dollars, they just increase the price in the vaults where they want to have more gold. So if we see a lot of gold being accumulated in Dallas, and because gold has flown to Singapore, for example, what Dell Engage can do is just charge a bit, pay a little bit more for gold being sold in Singapore, and since they don't need to ship over. So essentially, we are greatly reducing the amount of gold that needs to be shipped back and forth. And as cash becomes more popular, this function can become more and more useful. So that's just one example of how you can use these cash gold tokens. But the token itself, as you mentioned, it functions just like Bitcoin essentially. So there's no such thing as governmental borders or jurisdiction when it comes to crypto, because think of it this way. This is the best way I can explain it. When you want to make a bank account, you have to go to the bank and they will make an account for you. And then they will ask you, here's your bank account, put in your PIN number or put in your password, right? What happens with Cash Gold Token Bitcoin is the opposite. You don't go to anybody. Instead, you come up with your password first. And that password is called your private key. And then there's some mathematical algorithms which generate an address, which basically you can think of like your bank account, your crypto bank account, which is just we call it an address in crypto. And that's it. You're done already. Nobody else was involved. Anybody can send you tokens or Bitcoin to that address. So there's no bank, there's no entities, there's no anything. It's just mathematical algorithms that creates this. The only thing you have to be incredibly careful about is that if you don't use a very strong password, then people are going to hack it, because I literally created my own addresses. I called one. My password was one. You can try it out with password generators. You just put one and you get an address. Now, the problem is anybody else can guess one and see if there are any tokens behind the address one. And if they can guess the password, they can take your tokens. So when I'm saying password nowadays, essentially use a computer to generate, say, a 30 alphanumeric character or 32 alphanumeric character to make sure that it's a very strong password. But essentially, that's it. And that's what the beauty of the blockchain is. You create the password, and that's the only thing that matters. It's black or white. And because there's no entity behind it, there's no government that can make rules against it. And that's really what's been so revolutionary about Bitcoin and why Bitcoin basically has caught on. So us combining gold with this capability and do it in a jurisdiction which is essentially approving of it, it's giving a lot of power, and it's essentially, if we couldn't have done it before. We couldn't have done it before because the world was not ready from a regulatory point of view to go in that direction, and to some degree maybe because the technology wasn't quite there. Now both of these are here, and I thought it was very important for us to kind of go in early and try to create a system that's as transparent as possible and give it a try. Because if we can get liquidity into the system, we can build a much better alternative to what we have right now.
Okay. Um, Next question. Let's say what happens if every crypto goes bust, all fall to zero? What happens with my cash gold tokens?
Well, I guess the first thing is it's unlikely for that to happen, but cash gold token, you can always redeem it against gold. So let's say, for example, the price of gold is $1,700 per ounce. In the case of cash, because we go by gram, let's say it's $55 per gram. Now, if cash gold tokens start trading at $54, guess what? You can just buy it on the BitHump exchange, and you take delivery, and you're arbitraging, you're getting $1 for free. Now, okay, assuming we are charging 15 basis points, 0.15% for the redemption charge, and then if you're selling it back, and say Dylan Gage is buying it at, let's say 0.5% below spot, okay? So let's say your cost to go into physical ends up being 65 basis points. Now, if your cash gold token is trading at 53, it makes sense for you to just take the gold, buy the tokens, take delivery of the gold, either take the gold or sell it to get cash, to buy more of the tokens, and keep on repeating, thereby bringing the price of the cash gold token back to where it should be. So because it's backed by real gold, if it goes down, it's an opportunity for somebody to make money, which is why it's going to end up going back to where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
So because it's backed by physical gold and because it works, it doesn't make sense for it to crash to zero.
Okay. So in closing this interview, I'll ask you if you have any other things to say. But in closing this interview, can I say, if I resolve to buy cash tokens, which is backed by gold, this gold which is on the blockchain means it's not physically with me anymore. Now, granted, this can be pretty spooky for some guys out there, but although this trade-off, physically holding your gold that is proven to be on the blockchain, is that I can redeem my cash gold token back for gold in various countries all over the world. And in addition to that, I can sell my cash gold token and have money wired to my bank account, or I can even sell my cash gold token for Bitcoin, or I can trade it on an exchange for Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. Is that about right? Does that sum it up?
Yeah, essentially, because of the nature of these tokens, there's so many different ways of using them, and you don't have to go through us. Say, cash is only there when you need to redeem it, or if you want to tokenize. So if you want to buy these cash gold tokens, you can go to an exchange like BitHump, which is a centralized crypto exchange, and you can buy it using, you can transfer in fiat potentially or via Bitcoin, or you can use a distributed crypto exchange, which essentially means there's nobody behind it. It's also a trend towards where a lot of crypto trading is going, where you just have a smart contract. You send Bitcoins to one address, you get CGT in return without there being people behind it. So these are like some of the crypto side. Now on the physical side, I'm looking to have Silver Bullion start offering the option of buying and selling CGT, just like any other product. So instead of selling a 100-gram gold bar, I'll have 100 CGTs that you can buy. But Silver Bullion is just one entity among many. So I'm hoping that other bullion dealers will do so at some point. Now I'm being realistic because in Singapore we are allowed to do this as bullion dealers now. In other countries it's a bit more complicated, so it might take a while for that to happen. But that's not a big deal because you can always redeem your tokens very efficiently, and then you have all kind of bullion dealers, including Dylan Gage, and we have two other ones that are likely going to be coming on board before long, that are putting in a bid.
Yeah.
So there are so many ways that you can have liquidity, or you just redeem it. You either pick it up at the vault, which is another option, or you have it shipped to your home address, and then you sell it to somebody else because you got the physical gold. So you don't need to sell it back to a bidder in the cash marketplace. And then lastly, what you can do is you can also take your own gold and you can tokenize it. Now we're still working on some of these processes. Not everything, can be done at once because we have to basically work with Still Engage to make sure we have some of the testing processes in place and so on before we can accept tokenization. There, we can do it already at the safe house, but that's all stuff that's essentially going to come. So it's an incredibly versatile way of doing things.
Okay. If guys are interested in cash, where can they go to find out more about it?
Yeah, so go to cash.gold. You will see where we are shipping. There's even like a shipping calculator which will tell you how much it costs. Now, we can normally ship to 20 countries. It's about 20 to 23 countries which essentially allow for gold to be imported without duties and other legal issues. In some countries, it's just very difficult to do it. So we want to keep it simple. And essentially that means we can ship throughout most countries in Europe and in the United States, Canada, and Singapore, and we'll be trying to add more countries in the future. Having said that, because of COVID-19, Dylan Gage is basically telling us that it's still very difficult and unreliable to ship overseas outside the US. So right now we have it limited to 2 countries, Singapore and the United States. But that will be re-expanded to the 20 once things sort of stabilize themselves. And you go to cash.gold, you will see some videos, you will see how the redemption process goes, you'll see how simple it is. Essentially it takes less than 5 minutes to do. You can see all of the gold, where it's stored, how it's stored. And there are 3 videos which we created, which we try to cram as much information without becoming, too overbearing, too complicated. And, have a look at those. The thing with cash is, and my philosophy has always been, you can't ask people to trust you, nor should you, but you can build systems that are so transparent and that make sure that any errors we do are shown to the public and everybody, so that we have enough pressure on ourselves not to make errors, and everybody involved in the system has pressure not to make errors, because it took a while for the vaults to actually agree to have their internal vault documents be shown on cash. Because once you go into the cash system in the Explorer, you can see the documents with the signatures and so on that shows that the gold was deposited. So I had to do a lot of convincing on there. And I had to go through a lot of hoops to basically make sure the system is simple and efficient for the vaults to use before I can get them on board. So it's really a chicken and egg problem. It's getting the bullion dealers on board, it's getting the vaults on board, it's getting the crypto exchanges on board, and then finally at the end of it, make sure that users can actually start accepting it. And all I ask is basically invest a little bit of your time to look at it, understand it better, and see where it goes. And I believe that even if you don't think that crypto and so on is something that you want to be involved in any way, I think it's important for the community as a whole to have alternatives. And I think we're all aware of the shortcomings of our current systems, and being able to have 100% back open distributed crypto-based system that slowly develops and matures, I think that's something everybody can agree is a good thing. And that's essentially what Cash is.
Okay. Gregor Gregersen, is there anything else about Cash that we should know or you'd like to tell us before we head out?
I'm happy to answer any questions that might be coming up there, or come back, with questions. I think as people sort of start digesting it, it helps a lot for us to kind of get the feedback of people. Tell us what you think we could do better, what's wrong. If you just think you hate the whole idea for whatever reason, tell us that too. I've sort of been, spending the last 10 years looking at how we can not just store gold and silver safely, but how we can make sure that when we have the crisis, we are not going to be just dependent on the existing institutions. So that's basically my passion.
Okay, Gregor, we thank you for your time, and I'll let you head out. I know you got a busy day ahead, but thanks for coming on. This was our first time we ever did a live interview on the live stream, so thanks for coming on. And again, wish you all the best.
Yep. Take care. Thank you.
All right, take care.